How are you guys? Welcome back to War Game in China. And if you've been watching my last few videos, you'll know that I'm currently I'm playing the scenario I've come up with for the Battle of Jiangyin. Now, the Battle of Jiangyin commences on the 13th of August 1937 and continues until the 3rd of December 1937. So, if you watch my video, my next campaign, I was explaining that Jiangyin is the narrowest part of the Yangtze River, and it was where, at a meeting on the 7th of August, the Chinese Navy decided that it would place maximum effort into defending this position so as to guard the flank at Shanghai and any advance upriver the Japanese naval forces might make on Nanjing. So a very critical position, and it was a very long battle. So first off, I'd like to talk about Jiangyin itself. Jiangyin was a naval academy, a float plane squadron base. It was also the anchorage for a flotilla or company, I don't know exactly how the Chinese named them, of Thornycroft motor torpedo boats. And between the 13th and the 16th, we will see that the men of the torpedo academy will launch a sortie against the Izumo. And the way they will get there is by following the shallow creeks that are part of that lead into the Yangtze. And their attack on the 16th will surprise the Japanese. The next night, a group of naval swimmers will also try to hit the Izumo. But that will also be a failure, and there you go. Chinese were doing waterborne attacks using divers, certainly before the European War started. And these men may not have been as well equipped as their European counterparts, but they were there, they were doing their part, and their missions should be remembered. Now let's get back to Jiangyin. Now, although I said that the plan was for the fleet to be here, the guns to be here, and the landward approach to this defended by the fighting at Shanghai, and the naval approach to Nanjing defended by this, Jiangyin, we have to remember that this is not a passive defense. We have to remember that in the first Battle of Shanghai, the Chinese Navy had not taken any part in the battle. So therefore, on the day of the 12th of August, when a Japanese convoy is allowed to slip past Jiangyin unmolested, the Japanese Navy would well have thought, the Chinese Navy is not going to take part in this battle. And as I said, after those Japanese ships, that little convoy, sailed along, the block ships were put in place, and the minefields. Now, there was a bit of argument about the block ships. The Guangdong Navy was supposed to provide a training cruiser and an obsolescent light cruiser to use as scuttle ships, but the Guangdong commander insisted that the Chinese Navy, Jiang's Navy, must match him in at least 2 ships too, which meant that the Chinese had to hastily scuttle 2 ships they didn't want to scuttle, and didn't even have time to get the to salvage the armaments before they scuttled the ship. You know, these are the rogues and bounders of the Chinese Navy. Now, one would think, you know, as a passing observer, well, all the Japanese Navy has to do is come up the rivers to this approach and knock them out, because, I mean, the Japanese Navy outnumbers the Chinese Navy. The Chinese Navy, off the top of my head, is 53 or 50 odd vessels. The Japanese Navy is nearly 800 vessels. So, you know, it's a foregone conclusion that you would think, oh, the Japanese Navy is just going to push up river. But this lack of action, aggressive action by the Chinese against the Chinese Navy against the Japanese Navy on the 12th, as I said, it lulls the Japanese into a false sense of security. And on the day of the 13th and the 14th, the Chinese Navy will be conducting mass scuttling operations along the rivers on the approach to the Jiangyin. Now, some estimates put the number at 120, and others that it's about 70 vessels scuttled up the Huangpu. But, you know, you've got to remember that these could range from freighters to fishing boats, barges, and anything in between. So it was certainly an effort that the Chinese were successful in doing so, and it took a whole day. And they did it as the Japanese were, well, they weren't paying attention that day to what was happening on the Huangpu River upstream. They were paying attention to the Chinese troops attacking them. So all their air power on that vital day, the 13th and the 14th, was basically used up as troop support, and then by the, where is it, the 18th to 17th, the 18th, when the Japanese get more troops ashore and more landing craft, they can start to divert attention to Jiangyin. Now, first off, they've got to establish what is here. So they know basically what is here for their own spy network, but the first planes that are seen over Jiangyin are reconnaissance planes. Then you're talking for the next 3.5 months of the battle, over 30 air raids on the ships of the Chinese Navy and the guns and positions of the Chinese sailors defending Jiangyin. Now, all the time this is happening, you know, the casual observers say, oh, well, it's just such a passive defense. But you've got to look at the Huangpu River especially. Now, we'll go back to, as I said, if you watched my video presentation on the Thornycroft coastal motorboat, you will know that on the night of the 16th, there was a failed attack by boat 102 and 103 against the Izumo. Now, this was just how the torpedo boats were behaving. Now, at Jiangyin, there was the Torpedo Boat Academy, and there was the Naval Mine Warfare Academy. Now, the Naval Mine Warfare Academy is also equipped with Thornycroft CMBs. And what it's doing at night, just like the Torpedo Academy, who are using the waterways and narrow waterways and passage and creeks to navigate their way to Shanghai, the other Thornycroft boats, every night are weaving back along the Huangpu River and laying more mines, and then getting out along the creeks that feed into it. And the Japanese suddenly realized that they have nowhere near enough minesweepers. But also, on another note, you've got to realize and remember that the Chinese do have the odd shore battery and coastal artillery before you get to Jiangyin. There's one at Wushan, for example, you know, which will be over there. There's one at Wushan. And minesweepers for the Japanese become the most needed vessels. They've got enough air power that by the time the air raids start on the 16th, you know, there's a Chinese fleet here. There's no damage on the 16th. Goodbye. You know, as the time goes on, more and more ships of the Chinese fleet are sunk by Japanese aircraft until eventually the Chinese fleet, other than one or two ships that slipped away, is not there to defend Jiangyin. And we've got to remember that Jiangyin is a defense that everything relies on each other. The land defenses, you know, the land defenses need the support of the coastal guns. The coastal guns need the support of the ships, and the ships need the support, and the guns need the support of the block line. But after multiple Japanese air raids, the ships at Jiangyin have all been sunk. So with the Huangpu River being just a clutter of scuttled ships, it takes the Japanese almost three and a half months to push upriver and begin the assault on Jiangyin. Now, let's think about that. There's a navy of 53 ships taking on a navy of over 800 ships, and it took that Japanese navy over 3 months to get to this point here, where it is to land troops and take the position. The Japanese will land troops on the 1st of December downriver of Jiangyin. By the 2nd of December, the naval base has fallen, and on the 3rd of December, a final assault will take out the defensive positions on Bian Jiang Huang. And that will be the end of the Jiangyin. Now, let's think about that. The Battle of Shanghai ends on the 26th of November. And the Chinese army is hot-footing it. What's left of the Chinese army, the shattered Chinese armies, heading for Nanjing. Now, if the Japanese Navy get past Jiangyin and follow the Yangtze River, they will arrive, and do arrive, to the rear, because the Yangtze, any Chinese army defending Nanjing, upon getting the order to retreat, has to retreat across the Yangtze River. And if the Japanese Navy is there first, there's going to be no retreat, is there? And of course, for many, many tens of thousands of troops, the Japanese Navy did get there first. But we can't blame the troops, the defenders at Jiangyin for that. For that we must blame Chiang, because to be honest, Nanjing is a battle that never should have happened. And the only excuse for Nanjing was that Chiang really, really, really thought that if he kept resisting, even at Nanjing, the Western world would be sympathetic to him. And, you know, it's just twaddle. And Bai Chongzhi, von Falkenhausen, they all told Chiang, don't try and defend Nanjing. It's a death trap. But Chiang didn't listen to them. So now I want to talk about the guns at Jiangyin, you know? Now, I'm going to talk about them in a separate video, because to be honest, guys, I'm still digging and digging and digging. So the battle itself will be over by the 3rd of December. And if we look at it, the battle starting on the 16th, that's over 3 months of resistance from the Chinese Navy for the Japanese to get here. I mean, it's a stunning effort. And during those months, many Japanese minesweepers will be hit by coastal artillery. And indeed, the Japanese Navy will become so weary of mines on the rivers of China that they will describe mines as like grains of spilt salt on a family dinner table. And that was quite an achievement by the Chinese, because as I said, many of those mines were laid off once the Japanese thought, oh, we cleared the passage here. Now the Chinese would come back and relay their mines. Now what I also want to talk about here is the Yangtze itself. Now the Yangtze is to all intents a bastard of a river. And the reason it's a bastard of a river, and I want you to understand this, is that because the Chinese have held this position for 3.5 months, and because the Japanese have still to clear all the scuttled ships, and so many of which they'll salvage and put into service for themselves, but in that time, you see, the Yangtze River itself would change, because the Yangtze River, I mean, isn't a Chinese saying that you can't step into the same river twice? And the Yangtze River changes. So just by being here, and just by having this position fallen, it doesn't mean that the Japanese now can boat along the river full bore to Nanjing, because these waters are bloody treacherous. And you know, if you haven't got maps that are updated weekly, and this is the strength of the Chinese Navy, they know the river better than the Japanese. You can easily be scuttling yourself and running aground on the rivers of China if you haven't got access to them as a daily thing. You know, like fishermen know the waters are. I cannot emphasize the fact enough that just denying these waters to the Japanese for 3.5 months slows them down even by another week on the advance to Nanjing, because the waters change. You just can't charge your fleet down these up and down these rivers without knowing how deep the water is, or how wide the passages are, and that changes on a daily basis. So by the Chinese denying this river here, even when they're gone, the Japanese can't exactly use it to full tilt. I mean, yes, they're going to be in. They'll be in Nanjing, within 2 weeks? Within, I think, the 13th of December, Nanjing falls. But even by holding this up, that would have been a week. They would have had to go slow, because otherwise they could have bolted up that river in 2 days. So there we go. It's our first long look at the RoCN. I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, I will do another episode on the guns of Jiangyin, because they are so interesting. But that's all for now. Listen, guys, I'd love it if you shared my videos with your mates or online or any groups. Hit like, press subscribe. I'm going to try and get the guns one done this week too. See ya.